Just a little bit about Bryah Resources. We've been listed for almost 4 years now. Listed as a copper gold explorer, which has been perfect timing for us, really. Copper is the ultimate energy metal, and between that and another commodity, manganese, we think we're right in a very important sector of the market as far as exploring Australia for the energy metals of the future. I've been involved in exploration on our ground and within Western Australia for almost, since 1987. I've got very good relations with Indigenous people and the local people involved in our project in Western Australia. I regularly engage with them and working with them, we're exploring on ground, looking for the next major discovery. We're certainly focusing on high-grade copper gold deposits in our Bryah Basin project, which is our flagship project. And we also are looking to achieve production from manganese deposits we've established in our joint venture with OM Holdings, and I'll certainly talk about both of those in more detail going forward. A corporate snapshot for you. We've got 224 million shares on issue. At current prices, we're about $12 million market cap, and we've got over $3 million funds available at the moment. Our share registries increased from about a year ago when we had 500 shareholders. We've now got over 1,100 active shareholders, and the top 20 holds about 42% of the company. Management's well invested. Personally, I'm in that 7% there. So our projects from Western Australia, and certainly in the last 12 to 18 months, we've really realised that Western Australia is a tier 1 jurisdiction to be exploring, and certainly around the increasing focus on ESG type matters. We think that developing projects and finding new mineral resources in Western Australia is a very good place to be exploring. This is a map, and I'll just go back. So our flagship project is at the Bryah Basin here, about 750 k's from Perth to Meekatharra, and then another 150 k's into our Bryah Basin, which is our largest portfolio, and Gabonintha, which I'll talk about, is a smaller project. So this is a map of the Bryah Basin, and the takeaways from this is this geological summary is what they call the Bryah Basin, and the area was pretty well underexplored up until 2009 when Samphire made a discovery. This is Samphire Resources, ASX listed company, SFR. They made a discovery at a place called DeGrussa, very high grade deposit there. They've basically been mining copper gold from DeGrussa since 2011 and producing copper concentrate since 2012 there. And that's a very high grade deposit. Over 5% copper is the average sort of grade that they've been mining from a number of different ore bodies there. And it's really, that's the prize in the Bryah Basin. It's a VMS type deposit. And adjacent to it, they made a discovery a few years later at a place called Monty, which they're also mining underground and feeding through their plant. And another copper deposit in the area, which is very important historically, is Horseshoe Lights, which was mined back in the 1990s. And that was the first VMS copper gold deposit in the Bryah Basin. And it was a bit of an enigma until DeGrussa was discovered, and it was suddenly realised that this whole province has got a history of copper, and that's why we've been exploring. Our tenement package is this white outlined area here. It's about over 1,100 square kilometres of ground we've got, and we certainly surround we've got tenure surrounding the Horseshoe Lights copper gold mine. The DeGrussa deposit actually sits at the bottom end of what we call the Narracuda volcanics, which is mainly this green and orange zone through here. Whereas Horseshoe Lights sits right at the very top of the Narracuda volcanics. And that's very important from an exploration strategy for us. It's because we're really looking to find something in the same stratigraphic position as Horseshoe Lights. And so that's why most of our exploration effort has been looking for copycats of Horseshoe Lights. Windalar is an area we've had some very good success, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Mount Labashire, we've also had some early sniffs of copper with some nickel and cobalt up there, tied in with some manganese as well. And today I won't have time to cover that, but certainly there's information on our website about that.
So the Windala deposit sits about 13 kilometres south of the Horseshoe Lights mine, and this is a very cartoony, stylised geological map. The green is the Narracuda volcanics. The blue is what they call the Ravelstones formation, which is a sedimentary rock unit. And Horseshoe Lights sits right just below the contact of the two. So we know that Horseshoe Lights sits at basically the top position of the Narracuda volcanics, and this cross section, which is sort of projection through here, shows Horseshoe Lights sitting just at that contact between the top of the volcanics and the bottom of the sediments. And where we're exploring at Windala is exactly the same stratigraphic position. The other thing we like about Windala is we identified it through some good soil geochemistry, and at Horseshoe Lights we've matched the same pathfinder minerals at Windala as Horseshoe Lights. And at Horseshoe Lights, it started as a gold mine, so we've been finding gold near the surface at Windala, and we think that's going to lead us towards some copper at depth. This is a bit of a photo just of our drilling at the moment. We're up there conducting a diamond drilling program. We've extended that program since we started it, and you can see basically this outcrop running through this area here is actually the Marco unit, which sits between the volcanics and the Ravelstone. So we're drilling here through that contact into the volcanics, which are below that in the far ground. And we're certainly very happy with the progress of that program. We've got core, which is in the process of being put together to come back to Perth, and we'll be putting out information around that drilling over the next few weeks. Certainly a very exciting project from our perspective. If we find another DeGruza type deposit with this drilling or subsequent exploration, then it certainly is a company maker. In the case of Samphire, they went from an $8 million market cap to over $1 billion in about 18 months when they made their DeGruza discovery, and they're much larger than that today. Now to manganese. So our manganese projects are within the Bryah Basin, and after a bit of early reconnaissance work, we were able to attract a quality global manganese joint venture partner in the name of OM Holdings. They're listed on the ASX and also Bursa Malaysia. And they're a fully integrated manganese company with smelters in Malaysia, mines in Australia, which are due to close shortly. And we're basically doing exploration on our ground with their funds at the moment. I'll just talk about the manganese market very briefly, just because it's one of those not well-known commodities, but it is the fourth most utilised metal in the world globally. It's a critical and irreplaceable element when it comes to making steel, and over 90% of all manganese goes into steel production. The prices, they're sold on a dry metric ton unit, and there's an example there which I won't go through. But one of the things which is emerging at the moment, and we've all heard it, BASF, Elon Musk, they've all mentioned that manganese is part of the future of energy metals and energy storage. One of the things that they're trying to do with electric vehicles is make them more affordable, and the most important cost factor in an EV is the battery. So reducing the cost of the battery is paramount in a lot of the battery manufacturers and the motor vehicle manufacturers' minds. So one of the types of batteries that they're talking about is nickel, manganese, cobalt, NMC, and there's a variety of different ratios which are used by various manufacturers. But just talking about NMC batteries, the thing that goes into NMC batteries is what they call high purity manganese sulfate. And it's one of those products which is forecast to skyrocket over the coming decade. So you need high purity manganese sulfate, and it's in a crystalline form when it's placed into in the batteries. Most of the high purity manganese sulfate produced around the world at the moment goes into lithium ion batteries. Global production last year was just under 200,000 tonnes, and most of that came out of China. And demand is forecast over the next 9 years to go to at least 1.1 million tonnes. And it's probably likely to exceed that the way uptake of EVs is occurring. There's certainly plans around the world to increase capacity. And most of that, again, is going to be in China, although some jurisdictions are looking at production in their countries, including in Australia here.
And if all these projects come online, there will be about 1.2 million tonnes of capacity. But certainly, if that grows, there'll be a deficit in capacity. So there's certainly space for new entrants to come into the market. And one of the keys of producing manganese sulfate is the higher the grade manganese ore you produce as a feedstock, the easier it is to produce a high purity manganese sulfate. So this is just a map of our manganese exploration areas. We've acquired the largest manganese mine in the area, a place called Horseshoe South. And over at Brumby Creek and Black Hill, we've made some discoveries. Certainly at Brumby Creek, it's a virgin discovery for us. OM, as I said, are our JV partners, and they've been funding exploration with us. Currently, they're just moving towards a 51% equity position in the joint venture. And then at the moment, we're at 60-40. We'll be making a decision once they get to 51 whether we contribute to the project going forward. But certainly we're very optimistic about the results to date. This is a photo of the area where the manganese has been mined at Horseshoe South. Historical production has always been high grade, over 40% manganese has been produced, even in the most recent mining up until 2011. And there's certainly more manganese in that area from our drilling. We've identified that. It's a granted mining lease, so to get back into production on Horseshoe South is a very short timetable. Brumby Creek, it's an exploration license, first drilled in 2019 by us. This is a photo of myself and a couple of our geos at the time standing on some of the outcrop there. I was quite amazed when I went to that site for the first time to see the amount of manganese sticking out of the ground, which had never been drill tested. And we've identified other areas. So this photo is taken at Brumby East. Brumby West is shaping up as an interesting area as well. And also area 74, where we got the best manganese results to date. And that was in drilling where there's no actual outcrop of manganese. So there's certainly exploration potential for manganese in the area. This is some of the core that came out of that area 74 I was just talking about. And you can see these high grade zones of manganese. This area through here is probably 50% plus manganese, but overall this is all running at between 30 and 40% manganese. And the iron you can see mixed in between it. It's a different color, so we're looking at new technologies as a way of separating the iron from the manganese in our processing. Just to give you an idea of where we're at, we've been focusing on exploration, been doing a lot of drilling in the last 12 months, 18 months. We've done some geophysical surveys, and we've been just completing a drilling program to test those some targets generated from that survey. We've got some preliminary metallurgical test work underway at the moment using ore sorting and other dense media separation techniques. Some of that's quite novel, and it certainly provides opportunities which previously may not have been useful. And we've got mineral resource estimates planned to come out in the next few weeks. That will also come out with some exploration targets. Further on, our expectation is once we get beyond OM's 51% funding, there'll be a lot more drilling done next year, updated mineral resources, more geophysical surveys, more test work, feasibility studies, and some environmental studies as well. Now, a lot of these environmental type things aren't required on Horseshoe South. As I said, it's a granted mining lease, so permitting for that is a very short pathway. I'll just talk about Gabonintha very briefly, our other project there. We've got 100% of rights to minerals, basically not including vanadium, uranium, cobalt, titanium, manganese and iron ore. So we're really focusing on gold, copper, nickel, PGE type elements. Tumblegum South is an area which I'll just show you a map here. This is Tumblegum South. It's an isolated mining lease where we've been doing some exploration in the last couple of years. It's located along strike from existing gold mines. So you can see it's pretty obvious mineralisation trend is through here, which is where we've had some success. We identified a modest resource, about 500,000 tonnes at 2.6 grams per tonne for over 40,000 ounces. And we've entered into a development agreement with a group that's operating a gold mine further to the south. Now, last year we announced, or earlier this year, we announced a sale of the project. Basically, we're trying to monetize this because of the size of the tenement and the constrained constrained size to grow that resource, we've decided to sell it. We're going to get $500,000 cash as consideration for that, plus shares to the value of $1.8 million out of a company called Star Minerals Limited. Star Minerals is currently just wrapping up a $5 million IPO. I believe most of the funds are accounted for at the moment, so that will list in October, and we'll receive those funds plus those shares. And then once they get into production, they've got a team of mining guys lined up to work on this. We'll get more shares issued when 7 million performance rights convert. So we'll end up with about 20 to 30% equity in Star Minerals. We get some cash out of it, and they're looking to obviously focus on this as part of their business. So that's a good outcome for both Bryah and Star Minerals. And I should say that Spark Plus helped the 2.5 million out of the $5 million raising. So thanks very much to the team at Sparks Plus for that. Our other, so this is the tenement map of what's at Gabonintha. Australian Vanadium, who own the Vanadium rights, are basically developing a big vanadium deposit in this area here. It's about 10 or 11 kilometres long. We've identified the presence of low-grade nickel, copper, and perhaps not low-grade gold sitting in that ore body, which it presents some interesting opportunities for us, and certainly around the nickel and copper, which could be produced as a sulfide byproduct pretty simply. An area called New Hope, we did some sampling of some of the drilling that Australian Vanadium had completed a year or two before, and we're quite surprised. They're basically going to mine, this is a cross-section of the deposit here. That's their pit design. This is up in this New Hope area here. They're looking at mining the pink, and when we did some sampling of within those pink zones in particular, we started seeing gold, and the best interval was actually in a fault zone, a cross-cutting fault, where we got 10 metres at 27.5 grams per tonne from 53 metres depth. So that's really quite interesting for us because there's lots of cross faults through the ore body which need to be investigated. Looks like the gold has come through with some copper in a later event as these parts of the deposit have moved around. And so our plan is to go back to New Hope over the next few weeks or months to go and do 1,000 metres or so of drilling just to confirm this mineralisation and to get a better handle on what's going on in the area. So really the value proposition from our perspective, we're cashed up, we've got over $3 million in funds, we've got quality exploration targets that we're drilling up in the Bryah Basin at Windalar and Mount Labashire later on. The Manganese joint venture interest, that's certainly a pathway to early production with a hungry offtake partner. As I said, OM, their operations up in the Northern Territory are due to close next in this financial year. So they're keen to get alternative supply out of Australia. Tumblegum South sale will happen in the next few weeks, and we'll get some additional cash injected from that, plus an exposure to their upside. And Gabonintha, that's an evolving nickel, copper, and gold play with some PGE exploration also happening in the background. So who knows where that might go. So that's our story. Thanks for your time to talk today, and I'm happy to take some questions.